Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining our special meeting of Safe Silver Spring. We're glad to see you all here. We know that there are some issues of interest to the community, and Safe Silver Spring exists to facilitate a dialogue and communication between the Montgomery County Police Department and residents in our community. Tonight, we have the privilege of having Commander Dave McBain of Montgomery County's 3rd District, which is downtown Silver Spring District, to join us to answer your questions and discuss some recent events that are of interest to you. I know that most of us were alarmed by the reports of a shootout at Veterans Plaza near the skating rink last week. And several residents have contacted us and asked us to facilitate this conversation to get more information about the police presence, their strategy for dealing with these kinds of events, and answer questions. Other things have happened. There was the police chase yesterday. There was a stabbing recently, I think on Ellsworth. Feel free to ask any questions that you want of Commander McBain. He's really good about responding to our concerns. If you don't want to speak publicly, you can put your information in the chat, and we'll try to get to that over the course of this evening. So Safe Silver Spring is a community-based 501c3 nonprofit. We have a Facebook page. We have an online presence at www.safesilverspring.org. We'd appreciate any support from the community. We need board members. We need people to write articles. We need people to create events to facilitate the dialogue between the police and the community. And we do this regularly, 4 times a year, where the community gets together and meets with MCPD to discuss what's going on throughout the 3rd District and to ask questions. This is a special meeting because people have asked for it. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Commander Dave McBain, who is the captain of the 3rd District Precinct of MCPD. And put your questions in the chat, and there'll be time for raising hands after he concludes his introduction. So Dave, please.
Thank you, Alan. And just so people know, as far as the chat's concerned, normally when we do the Safe Silver Spring, all 3 or 4 of my lieutenants are with me, and we try to knock down those questions. So I'm not going to be able to really speak and talk about a lot of these things and answer questions and also read the chat. So just bear with me. And like Alan said, I'll stay on as long as we need to answer questions once I go over a few things, and then we'll go from there. So Alan had reached out to me, and obviously when we had the shooting a couple weeks ago on Veterans Plaza, it really it sparked some attention for downtown Silver Spring. Not that we didn't have enough as it was. So I agreed to come and meet with you guys tonight and talk about a few things. And I think it's going to be a little less of me talking about some of this information I have and more of, actually getting some questions from you guys. But before I do that, I just want to give, because I've heard a lot of calls for more police officers in downtown Silver Spring. I'm going to give you a little context. I'm going to show you what I have downtown Silver Spring, as well as I'm still covering the rest of the 3rd District, which is rather large based on its dense population. So I think when I go over the numbers and I go into the enforcement strategies, I hope that answers some of your questions. And by all means, I'm not here claiming that Silver Spring doesn't have a crime problem downtown, but what I am here to do is defend what we're doing, defend what the officers are doing day in and day out, and kind of give you a little perspective of how we're dealing with things, and also to give you some real life things that we're dealing with still a lack of recruitment of police officers and the retaining of police officers. And so a lot of these things that we've talked about over the last year or two, they're not really going away. And when we're talking about, putting more officers on the street, that just doesn't happen. There's a 6-month academy class. There's 15 weeks of training. It's getting classes that are large enough that can actually make an impact on the population of our police department. So with that, I'm going to just talk about the resources, because Safe Silver Spring, we usually talk about the entire Silver Spring district, but I know tonight we're talking about downtown. So let me just explain to you what I have that's working downtown Silver Spring. And a lot of you, I know that a lot of people don't like when I use the sector designations, but downtown Silver Spring and the urban district is part of my George 1. So
Commander McBain, can you just review what happened on that day for some
you
context?
for the shooting?
Yeah.
So at approximately 10:30 in the morning, we started receiving, we received a call for shots fired for a shooting. Typically, we start sending officers priority. And as we were responding to that area, we started receiving more calls, which kind of lets us know that this is probably a legitimate shooting. And so we had a rather quick response time. I think it was a couple minutes, in which took us time to get there. But by the time we got there, the two individuals had fled the scene. We had some potential lookouts for a dark colored Honda. I don't believe that panned out. And then one of the individuals had left on foot. But basically, these two individuals had some type of encounter on Veterans Plaza. They were meeting there. That was not a chance encounter, and that wasn't one victim and one suspect. That was two suspects meeting there for something that probably wasn't good. I don't know if it was a drug deal. I don't know if it was for any other type of criminal activity. But at some point, the meeting doesn't go well. They split up, and as they split up from one another, going in separate directions on Veterans Plaza, they began shooting at each other. They both produced firearms, and when they were shooting, obviously these bullets were hitting places downtown. So the Cava restaurant, their window was struck. There was a vehicle that was struck that was occupied by a really nice Ethiopian woman, and she's very, very lucky to not receive the injury. And so, but anyhow, these individuals left. And this is an ongoing investigation. I'm really not at liberty to talk about where we're at with that investigation, but I said in our last meeting, or last time we talked about this, that I was confident that we would have some people in custody. I'm very, very confident that that's going to happen. It just takes a little bit of time. We did recover some ballistics, some spent casings, shell casings. And that always goes towards our investigation as far as ballistics are concerned. But we did very quickly get the information out to the public and to other law enforcement agencies in the region. We had some really good still pictures that we were able to obtain from video that we obtained from Veterans Plaza, and from also some other camera systems that are downtown. So the camera systems really were helpful in getting good pictures of the suspects. That good?
Thank you. That was very helpful. That's good background.
Okay. So let's talk about what we have in downtown Silver Spring. So I run 3 separate shifts hours of the day in Silver Spring, and so I have a shift from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., a shift from 3 p.m. to 1 a.m., and I have a shift from 8:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. They work all the way through the night. Those shifts vary in size, but typically there are about 6 police officers just designated for the George sector with a supervisor. And sometimes I have overlapping days where I have multiple shifts in, so it could be as much as 12. And those officers, they're driven by the radio. They're responding to calls for service. And in between calls, they do proactive patrols. So all through the day, 6 to 4, 3 to 1, and 8:30 to 6:30, I have those officers. In addition, I have a DCAT team, so a district community action team. That's a sergeant, a corporal, and 5 police officers. I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers and the cases that they've been making in downtown Silver Spring. But for some of you who have been on these meetings, you know that I didn't have a DCAT team for a while, and I basically built it from scratch. And so that team became fully operational in March, and they're still, and they're fully operational. Now I will tell you that DCAT team was supposed to be for all of my sectors, right? So my George, Henry, and my Ida sector, and work various different crimes throughout the district. Because of the problems with downtown Silver Spring, since March when they were created, they have never left downtown Silver Spring. So these seven officers on various nights, 40 hours a week and overtime, they're in downtown Silver Spring. With the exception of on occasion, they've had to go to other districts to assist for calls for service. But with the exception of that, they've primarily been downtown. In addition to the DCAT, I have a central business team, district team, and that's a sergeant and 5 officers. They're your officers that you see out on the bikes, on the bicycles. They're the ones that are riding in Veterans Plaza, and they not only do a lot of good work for showing up on the calls quickly, but they are also my voice or my my liaison to the businesses of downtown Silver Spring, and they work on preventative measures for larcenies and different things like that. And they're also a unit that does a lot of work with our homeless and mental health issues that are downtown. So in addition to those 2 units, I have a special assignment team. Now that's a plainclothes unit, and I don't talk a lot about them, but I will tell you that they're in my arsenal, right? They're in my bag of tricks is where I deploy them. They spend a lot of time in downtown Silver Spring, but they do in fact work in other parts of the district, because I just I can't abandon the rest of Silver Spring when I'm and just stay hyper focused on downtown. But that special assignment team is a sergeant, a corporal, and 6 police officers. And like I said, they're surveillance based. They do a lot of behind the scenes work that you just don't even know that they're out there. And they do a lot of surveillance, and they don't answer calls for service. They are self dispatched, and they work and they rove throughout the downtown area, generally at nighttime. But specific hours, I'm just not going to go into that, but they're out there. Now, those are the resources that I have with the Montgomery County Police Department, with my 3rd district. In addition to that, probably halfway through the year, for at least, I would say at least 6 months now, the Maryland State Police have partnered with us on Friday and Saturday nights. They send 2 troopers either Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday. It depends on their scheduling, but they send 2 troopers that work in downtown Silver Spring. If they work on Friday nights, they work with my DCAT team, and they kind of are like a like a combined force down there, and they do typically just a lot of traffic stops. They specifically they do traffic stops in downtown Silver Spring. on George Avenue, Colesville, and all points in between there, focusing on DUIs, focusing on guns, focusing on just any type of criminal activity, and also traffic safety. Those two troopers, or on those any given night, they usually spend the entire night down in Silver Spring and work till at least midnight and sometimes beyond those hours, depending on some of the cases that they're working. Now, those troopers are from the Rockville Barrack up on Montrose Road. In addition to those two troopers, Maryland State Police has their Spider team that's working in downtown Silver Spring, and they've been here for, I think, 3 and it might be 4 months. And they work generally on weekends. But just to give it some context of that, that's like a four-man unit or 4-trooper unit. Their primary focus is on DUI investigations, but it's kind of a force multiplier because they tend to be down there to help out when things occur, like robberies or shootings or other things happen with the bars and the nightlife down there, and they help us out with incidents down there. But just in the last couple weeks, well, I will say like one week they got 8 DUIs, and this is for like 3 or 4 nights. Another night, 5 DUIs a week. Another week, 7. So they're ranging in the area of 5 to 10 DUIs in Silver Spring in the times that they're working. They're going to continue to work in Silver Spring for the rest of the year. And I don't really know what their 2023 projections are. They're definitely welcome here, but I know that they do work in other places in the state. And then, so those are other resources from the Maryland State Police. But one more thing I want to talk about as far as the assets that I'm putting in downtown Silver Spring is the overtime detail. And these are, I've talked about this before, but these are static positions. These are 4 officers that work in, well, basically I look at the crime, where I'm having crime, and I put these officers in these positions. And I call them static because they don't rove, they don't drive around, they stay in that area, they keep their lights on, and then every hour, these 4 officers are tasked with doing garage checks in the various garages, because what we've recognized is that we're having incidents like robbery, like auto theft, theft from auto, weapons violations in the garages, because that's where people are parking. So just to give you an idea of when those officers are working, Wednesday and Thursday, they work from 7 p.m. to midnight. That's 4 officers every Wednesday and Thursday. And understand, these are additional officers. These are this is overtime allocations that I've deemed necessary to give extra patrols down there. So Wednesday, Thursday from 7 p.m. to midnight. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, an additional 4 officers work from 9 p.m. to 2 in the morning. And then I kind of have an overlap because on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I also bring an additional 4 officers that start either at midnight and work till 5 a.m. or they start at 1 o'clock in the morning and work till 6. The reason I have that altered time is because I told you earlier, I have a shift that works from 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. And so that gives those officers the ability to, once they're done with their normal shift, they'll just hold over and they'll start working an additional 4 hours throughout the morning to satisfy the coverage for this extra static positions. And like I said, they stay in these locations as a deterrent, and every hour they do their garage checks. They've been very beneficial. In just this last week, 2 of the garage checks produced 2 separate incidents where firearms were located. So I'm seeing a lot of good work coming out of that. Now, let me just say that what I just told you, I would almost bet you a paycheck that downtown Silver Spring, with the resources I just described to you, is probably the most policed area in Montgomery County. I know there's been calls for more officers, but that's just not going to happen right now. And I don't say that lightly, but I don't have the manpower. I don't have any more resources to put down there. And I'm also pushing these guys to the limit. And a lot of these details are overtime. So these are officers that are either holding over or coming in for additional hours. So I believe that the allocations, the manpower that I have downtown is adequate, and I really have nothing more to give. But I just wanted to give a little perspective of what I have downtown. Now, with that, Alan, I think because we're kind of different tonight, does anybody have any questions about the resources I'm putting downtown?
So let me just take this opportunity to welcome a couple of our elected officials to Tacoma Park. Mayor Kate Stewart, I believe, is here, and State Delegates Lori Charkoudian and Janelle Wilkins. So thank you. And I think we've got representation from Councilmember Albornoz and Jawando's offices. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Greetings, Janelle. My question is, and the electeds and their staff, need to hear this, is you've been pretty consistent in telling us about your staff requirements over the course of the last 2 years that we've been doing this. And Representative from David Moon is here. Thank you, Delegate Moon's office. What kind of resources do you need? I mean, you say you think you're adequately staffed for downtown Silver Spring, but it seems like if you had 12 more officers, it would be easier on everybody. And I'm just wondering if you've made requests for more staff from the police chief and the county council and the county executive. So I'm interested in that. And then the other question I would just throw out there is, what can we do as neighbors and residents to help you in your work? What kind of supervision and vigilance can we do to help you do your work?
Okay, so one thing I'll say, and I don't say this lightly, or take this lightly, but 12 more police officers wouldn't have stopped those two individuals from having their shootout in Veterans Plaza, right? Even if I had an officer stationed down there, not so sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but more cops doesn't mean that that's those types of incidents are going to go away. So that's one thing. But two, Alan, there are no more police officers, right? Every district throughout Montgomery County is operating at a deficiency in officers, and that's based on what we've been experiencing for the last couple of years with officers leaving the job. I think I know that the department as a whole, we're down I think almost 90 police officers. And so I'll tell you that I'm definitely down officers. I have vacancies that I need filled, but I also have, and these are things that are out of our control. I have about 10 or 11 officers that are on no duty status for various reasons, of either illness or injury, or they're just out. I have 4 officers that are detailed, that they're deployed with the military. So there's a number of things. I have officers on my book that just really aren't working right now. So, but for me to say to Chief Jones or to my assistant chief Willie Parker Lone, hey, I need more cops, he just doesn't have them to give. And so right now I'm currently training 4 rookies, 4 brand new police officers. I'm happy to say that all 4 are doing really well. And so I anticipate by I think mid-December, I think it is. And there'll be a single unit. So that'll be 4 more officers that I'll have. And, it's at that point that I try to kind of adequately fill all my beats and my sectors to make sure that I have coverage all over. So, you know, I'm happy to say that we have 29 officers in our latest academy class. And I don't believe they've lost anybody yet. And that's a great thing. So if we can graduate all 29 of these individuals, that will be a breath of fresh air. We haven't seen that for probably 2 years now, because our academies have been in the range of about 13 to 18. So to see a class of almost 30 is going to be really, really a breath of fresh air. And I hope we can get them all out and in training and on the street. So does that answer your question there, Alan?
That was the answer to my question. Then I also asked what residents can do.
Yeah. So let me kind of go into. I want to talk a little bit about something, and that kind of will answer the question that you just said. So I think it was about a year ago. We had a crime summit in downtown Silver Spring, and we talked about a number of these issues. And at one point, I think it was Bryant Folger had asked, you know, what do you need help with? And so I was very, you know, we had talked about a lot of things that we were doing, and all these units that I was talking about tonight. They really were just brand new. We were just starting to do this. But the interesting thing that I've said since I've been the commander here is that I've always embraced the idea of reimagining police work, right? But I've also been very clear that I don't see a lot of reimagination. I see a lot of the same things, and I see that the police are handling the same stuff. Right. And we were looking for ways of getting out of homelessness and getting out of mental health. And I'm not throwing stones here, but let me just throw a couple numbers out at you, because it's going to make sense about what you and also the elected officials that are on tonight can do to help out. But let me just okay. So this year to date, from January 1 till today, we have served in Silver Spring only 409 emergency petitions, right? So that's 409 times that at least 2 of my police officers have had to take multiple hours to take a person into custody and to bring them to a hospital to receive mental health treatment, right? 409 times. Think about that. And sometimes it's not just 2 officers. Sometimes it's 5 officers. And it consumes a lot of our time. Now, here's something that's very interesting. And I'm not trying to pick fights, but everybody knows about Progress Place, right? On George Avenue down by Firehouse 1. So Progress Place is where it's kind of a partnership between private, government, and doctors, and they focus on homelessness and mental health issues, right? Well, in this year alone, from January to tonight, my officers have responded to Progress Place 476 times to handle calls for service. I guess what I would say is if that's the place that's supposed to focus and be the experts in dealing with homelessness and mental health, and we're trying to get police out of this business, why am I spending so much time there? Now, I just throw those numbers out there because I think if you did the math with all that manpower, officers responding to these calls, my argument would be is that if we didn't have to handle all those things, and I get that we're not going to be out of mental health and homelessness 100%, but because sometimes it can be very violent, but there's a lot of those things that we can get out of, and that we shouldn't be a part of, so that social workers and the crisis intervention teams can handle it. But if we could get out of that business, and we started seeing this reimagination and these models of pathways for homelessness and for mental health to get treatment without putting the burden on police, all those hours could be that were not involved in that could be devoted to violent crime, right? And something was interesting that I said this during our last meeting, but I have to prioritize how I use my officers. My primary focus for them is to deal with violent crime, whether it's in downtown Silver Spring or whether it's in White Oak or Burtonsville or wherever in my sector. Well, that's always going to trump property crime. Not that I'm not putting off or diminishing the seriousness of burglary and theft and things like that. But when it comes to public safety, I've got to make sure that my violent crime is being addressed fully before I address property crime in some instances. And don't get me wrong, it happens all over the place. Things, we could be dealing with burglaries up in Burtonsville or Briggs Cheney and dealing with violent crime downtown or in White Oak or whatever. It seems to be nonstop. But the more we can get out of the homelessness and mental health business, the more we can focus our efforts on violent crime. And I think that's really what the people want. And I know that some of our officials have talked about it, and I get it. There's a lot of hurdles. They're having just as much problems getting social workers hired than we are with hiring police officers. So I don't expect some miracle thing to happen overnight, but I'm just saying that I think that's the solution to keeping police focused on things that we kind of want our police focused on. So those are real numbers. Those are real numbers that I'm dealing with in Silver Spring. So Mike, to end that, Alan, I would say to the people on this call and to citizens, to community members, make sure that your council and the executive know that's important, and let's get that across the finish line and see a bigger show of HHS in that arena.
So let's go to our gallery view here. Now, everybody, please take advantage of this time to ask questions. You know that you can raise your hand by clicking on the reaction button on the bottom of your screen, and the very bottom of that, it says raise hand. And then we'll take as many questions as we can about what's recently happened in Silver Spring and other concerns that you have. And Albie, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. First, appreciate you being here tonight and Alan putting this together. But Commander, you said specifically something about retention. And so I'd love to understand, the drivers on the retention issues. I threw a couple, suggestions in the chat, but, we'd love to hear, what the issues are from retaining your officers, and, what we should be doing to press our elected officials to help you have better retention.
Yeah, so I will tell you that there's been some shifts, and I kind of was on the camp of predicting this, but so officers leave the department for a number of different reasons, right? So some officers are already in that retirement age. They've reached the 25 years, and when we experienced the last couple of years that we've had in law enforcement, and it's gotten better, but there were some rough times there. Some of those guys and gals they just decided to get out. They were just, they were done. And so we saw, we saw officers that were in that range of retirement that just said, I'm going to get going. Then we saw a certain number of officers that they just got out of law. They left our agency, but they got out of law enforcement altogether. They, I don't think anybody would argue with me, but it became, a lot of these guys and gals were thinking, it's just not worth it to me personally, right? The risk of, potentially going to jail for making a mistake and things like that. And I'm not going to get into all that debate tonight, but some officers decided, you know what, in this kind of 21st century policing, maybe it was a bad career choice and I'm going to go to the private sector or go somewhere else not doing police work. And then we saw some officers that left Montgomery County Police Department to take jobs with other agencies, either federal or they went to other states or even other agencies within the state of Maryland. I'll tell you that I had, over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, I've had officers go to other counties in the state. I've had officers go to other state state police departments, and I've had officers go to federal police agencies. And what I'm seeing is the grass is not always greener on the other side. And I had so I had one officer came back a couple months ago from another agency, came back to Montgomery County. And I have two more officers. I have two more officers that are getting ready to do that very thing. A lot of times what they do is they take a leave of absence, or there's policies, there's rules they have to follow, but they sought careers in law enforcement in other agencies. And I think what they recognized is what we had to offer was really good. So what would I say for people to say to Montgomery County politicians, to council and the executive? Clearly, especially in the DMV, there's always you always want to be in that in the earning category. You see that agencies kind of flip-flop from being the highest paid in the region to dropping down and stuff. So obviously increased salaries are going to keep officers here. Increased salaries and starting salaries are going to attract officers here. And then also, some of the younger guys don't get this as much as some of the older guys, but there's also things that they can do as far as our benefits are concerned. But anything to improve our quality of life, I think would be beneficial. So that would be my request of politicians. I'll tell you that I think it's 45% of my officers do not live in Montgomery County. And I don't think that's something we're going to really fix overnight. But a lot of these younger officers don't live in the county just simply because they really can't afford to live here. And many live north, Frederick, Washington County. We even have officers that are living in Pennsylvania. That's a reality that we're dealing with. But I think that, if you were to increase the pay and make it so that, an officer could live in the community that he serves, I think that's a win, right? I'm a lifelong resident of Montgomery County. I grew up in Rockville, and I've only lived here, and I plan to retire here. But that's not the norm anymore. You see guys and gals that never lived here and never intend to live here. I feel like I just feel like when you grow up here, go to school here, and live here, I think you own it a little bit more, right? I care very much about this county, and I think other officers that live in the county care very much as well. So yeah, and I've always been a proponent of, and I know we're getting ready to see some new council members come on board, and I think that's great. I've never been shy to say that it makes a big difference when our council members support us in the things that we're doing. We really are very, our training is excellent. We do it really well. And we have some incredible men and women that are serving this community. And I think they're human beings too. They just like to be patted on the back every now and then for a job well done. I think it goes a long way. And I think, quite honestly, for a while there, we did not see that in Montgomery County. And there was a lot of division between police and our government officials. I think there's no doubt about it. It's gotten better, but we still have a long way to go to have a good relationship. We're very accountable for ourselves, and I think that to have a workforce that is proud to come to work, I think they need to be appreciated. And I think I've seen a shift. I saw a lot of anger towards police in the last few years. And I'm starting to see that shift, and I'm very happy about that shift. Our community engagement is, we're doing more community engagement than we ever have in the past. And so I think that's a good thing.
Commander McBain, I'm one of those people who believe that if there was a police car at the intersection of Ellsworth and Fenton, that visibility would make a substantial difference to bad guys who want to come in the area, and
Right.
would just reassure the community that the police is present. I know that bicycles do that, and I wonder if that's possible. I know you've got the resource problem, but I'm pretty sure a police car down there would make people think twice about pulling a gun on either side of skating rink.
Yeah. So, Alan, I can tell you that I've had police cars put there, and I have not for a while. I agree, but I do have one down at Fenton and Bonifant, and that's one of my locations that I have. But the reason is because I'm seeing far more crime down there than I am up at Veterans Plaza. But I'm gonna sit back and look at shifting around my static positions a little bit. Obviously, Ellsworth at the plaza there is one of those positions that I'm gonna put a car, especially as we're coming into the holiday season. And Alan, you actually, I got so much going on downtown, I sometimes forget to talk about it, but so I wanted to also highlight that in addition to this package deal that I'm, have downtown in Silver Spring, I'm also the only district right now currently operating our camera systems. I have one at Bonifant and Fenton, and I have one out on Georgia Avenue, right there in front of Society Bar and Lounge. And those camera systems, they've proven to be just really beneficial to our agency. It's not the big brother, and I want to be sure that people understand that. I use those cameras, and I'll tell you, in years past, if we had a shooting or some type of aggravated assault or major incident, it seemed like we could always find witnesses that would talk with police and would provide us statements of what they saw, and we could follow things up. What we're finding is, and this isn't just Montgomery County, we're seeing this nationally, but people are reluctant to work with police as witnesses and to provide us information. And it's just another hurdle that we have to get over. But with these camera systems, we're obtaining pictures of individuals that are of interest to us. We're getting tag numbers of vehicles that we can follow up on, where if we have a shooting and they run into a vehicle and leave the area, we've got the tag number. So the automation or the technology that I'm using downtown has been really beneficial. And I will tell you that Montgomery County just received, because I'm renting those cameras, not me personally, but the department's renting those. And our first shipment of these types of cameras have come in, and we're starting to deploy them. And so you're going to see more of them down there as a deterrent. I mean, it's very clear that they're police cameras, and so it's a deterrent. And then one other thing to talk about technology is I'm operating a permanent LPR, license plate reader, monitoring cars that are coming out of the District of Columbia. I think the last time we spoke, I told you that in a very short period of time, those cameras alerted on 402 stolen vehicles. And what happens is it sends a message to all the officers in downtown Silver Spring, and we attempt to locate those vehicles and place those individuals in custody. And we've had a lot of success doing that. It also alerts us to felonious individuals coming into the county, into Silver Spring, and gives us pictures of those individuals so that we can try to find them as well. So the technology that I'm putting in downtown Silver Spring has proven to be beneficial.
Thank you. Carlene, go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you, Commander. I will say just that I do appreciate you talking about the limits of policing and just adding more police, which unfortunately I heard a blanket call for, does not necessarily solve the types of problems that we have. That doesn't mean that the shootout, unfortunately, that happened in front of Cava, would not happen. Think
Sure.
about the District of Columbia. There are police cars stationed everywhere.
Yeah.
I have driven past blocks with police cars stationed and still seen crime taking place. So
Yeah.
that is not the root of it. So I'm glad you said that. The other thing I'm glad you mentioned was the involvement of police in non-violent, quite frankly, social issues, such as dealing with people who are unsheltered, people who have mental health or behavioral health crises. I personally am interested in seeing this county move towards a non-law enforcement response. There are other places, Denver, San Francisco, a lot of us know about the Cahoots program in Eugene, Oregon, where trained mental health and community professionals can go out without police and respond to these types of situations. The problem in Montgomery County that police do not want to give up that authority. I myself have called and have asked for non-police assistance in certain situations. And instead of getting a crisis response team, I get 4 squad cars. This is a problem with the way that MoCo police continues to operate. We say we've reimagined public safety here, that we want to do things smartly and differently, yet we don't. The chase the other day down Georgia Avenue with 20 or so squad cars at rush hour doing a high-speed chase, that is bad policy. It is dangerous. We are very lucky that somebody pushing a baby stroller wasn't killed. Lots of locales have outlawed these types of high pursuit chases. Montgomery County Police has not done that. So we are not doing the best that we can.
So I appreciate your comments, Ms. Ponder. First about the pursuit, those 3 individuals put a gun to a man's head, told him that they were going to blow his head off if they didn't give him his wallet and all his property. I think that's pretty heinous and needs to be dealt with. And it's just the way we do things right now. But we don't take pursuits lightly. We stopped. That pursuit ended with a crash, but we also seized 2 firearms. We arrested 3 individuals, and we got that individual's property back. So I understand your concerns, but there's reasons behind what we're doing, and that could be another topic that we could talk about in the future. But just understand that we don't pursue but for very few things, and I think a gun to the head would be one of those things that we'd continue to do that for. But I understand your concerns on safety there. And as far as your comments in regards to us still dealing, responding to these mental health calls, we don't have a choice. That's the way this county operates. It's not really the police department, right? we talk a lot about the crisis intervention teams. We need probably 4 times the amount, right? But until HHS and until I think county government or leaders address that, then we're always seem to be the one who calls. Everybody calls 911. We're the only ones that can't say no. So I would disagree with you in just in a little bit in that we really don't want to be in that. We don't want to be in it, but we have no choice. Now, I'll tell you, and I think like you mentioned things going on around other parts of the country, I think there's also really good programs going on like up in Frederick that have a hybrid of a paramedic, a police officer that's not dressed, not in a uniform, and a mental health social worker, and they respond as a team. I don't want to overstep my boss's. I don't know what we have planned for the future, but I think there's other ways to deal with mental health and homelessness, like you said, without a law enforcement response. So thank you very much.
We're going to go to Dan next, and those of you who have put questions in the chat, since it's hard for us to get to them, please raise your hand and ask the questions audibly. Dan, you go next.
Yes, going back to the pursuit incident, I saw that the high-speed chase was heading towards the Maryland DC line, which was just 2 traffic lights away. So my question is, had he crossed into the District of Columbia, then what? Do you have some kind of relationship with the DC Police Department to address these issues? Because in the past, when I grew up in Shepherd Park and Geranium Street, the car would crash on 16th Street. And I remember my father observing what we believed to be the driver hiding in our backyard, and went to the Montgomery County Police on 16th Street, and they were not the least bit interested in investigating. And by the time the DC police showed up, the guy had gone. So I wondered if that, if there's better cooperation between DC and Maryland now.
We have very good relationship with the Metropolitan Police Department and PG County Police Department. Oftentimes, even in that pursuit, Prince George's County's helicopter was assisting us on that as well. But oftentimes when we have a pursuit that enters the District of Columbia, we almost always stop unless it's a felony of a violent type. And we usually, we place the lookout to DC, and we've had a lot of success with DC actually being in position to wait for the pursuit to come to the district line and to continue that pursuit or to make a stop of the individuals when they enter into DC.
Lolly, it's so great to see you. Why don't you ask your question? You are muted.
Thank you, Alan. Hi. Okay, my question is what we're seeing happening in downtown Silver Spring, is this really related to homelessness and mental health? Or is there something more structural about how we're using downtown? And are we having violent criminals that are coming into downtown to transact for certain transactions or exchanges? Is it local crime that's happening, or are we becoming a regional hub?
Good question, Ms. Van. We have a lot of offenders from the District of Columbia and from Prince George's County and from Northern Virginia. Something that has been something that I've been trying to get done in downtown Silver Spring is to actually close at night. Silver Spring, some businesses, some nightlife keeps operating at 3, 4, 5, and even 6 o'clock in the morning. And it causes a lot of our problems. I said in the last time I spoke with this group, sometimes I feel like I'm babysitting downtown Silver Spring just to get us to the daylight hours in the morning. And I think that if Silver Spring would close, I would love it to close at 2 o'clock. I think I'm going to concede to 3. But I think that if Silver Spring would close and we'd roll up the carpets at night, I think that I could deploy some of my resources that stays in Silver Spring to babysit it. I could put them into the neighborhoods to deal with property crimes like most jurisdictions. But 2, I think you would see the violence. It would just not be there. There would be nothing. There would be no reason to stay in Silver Spring. I know that many people on this call know we have some establishments downtown that are 100% working with us. Society Lounge. They've hired off-duty police officers. They have they paid out of their own pockets for metal detectors. They're doing things and helping us. Sometimes on weekends, some of the nightlife operations that are cooperating with us sometimes put as much as maybe 12 to 15 extra police officers downtown, in addition to what I've already talked about. But my belief, and I believe that there's supposed to be something coming up, a vote of some type of, hours for Silver Spring. I hope something passes that will kind of shut us down. I don't think we're losing I don't think we're losing revenue. And I don't want to dive in there. I'm not a financial, whatever, but I can tell you that the longer I have to really kind of babysit downtown, the less that I can, reallocate some resources at specific times of the morning hours. It would be great if the officers didn't have a lot of work to do downtown and could be in the neighborhoods like Woodside and like some of the other neighborhoods who are experiencing theft from auto.
So what would work for you maybe would be some sort of amendment to the zoning for certain kinds of businesses would have to close at 2 o'clock. And then you could have other kinds of businesses that could operate all night long, like a 7-Eleven or.
Yeah, and that would be that's yes, you're exactly right. But I think the last time I counted, there's 9 hookah bars in downtown Silver Spring that really remain open all the time. I'm not even naming names, but I'm just saying that a lot of times when you're the only game in town in the DMV, a lot of people come into Montgomery County, into Silver Spring, and it doesn't take much for things to, over the summer, multiple times, I had incidents at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning where I called in resources from all 5 police districts in Montgomery County, the other 5, as well as the Maryland State Police and Park Police. So we had some pretty significant events down there with just chaos.
We've got two hands raised from Paul and Stephanie before I call on them. Commander McBain, we had sort of an upsurge in public safety concerns a year ago. I mean, it was sort of last November, December, when it seemed to be getting out of control, and it calmed down pretty much during the spring and the summer. Is there anything to the seasonality of this that is of concern to you?
No, Alan, there's no rhyme or reason. I'd love to come in here and say that all my numbers are down, but they're not. I've seen success with auto theft. Those numbers have gone down. I'll talk a little bit of some numbers. Here's some interesting things just to put in perspective of the DMV, and when we're talking about PG County and DC. So the District of Columbia has had 392 carjackings. Prince George's County has had 440, and Montgomery County has had 65. That's pretty impressive with those neighbors having such a significant problem. I pulled the numbers just this evening, and Silver Spring, man, I've got numbers written over here. I just wanted to make sure. I want to say Silver Spring had 13 of those 65 carjackings. I'm not making light that any carjacking's bad, but if you historically these meetings, we had some significant rise in carjackings, and we've really done very well at stopping carjackings from occurring at such an alarming rate. So we have seen some successes, but unfortunately we have seen, you know, there's been a rise in street robberies and theft. But also let me tell you that, and I really highlight this quite a bit, I've seen a significant increase in our weapons numbers, but that's because of the arrests that are being made. The DCAT team that I was talking about earlier, since March, they've seized 24 firearms in traffic stops, basically traffic stops in downtown Silver Spring. Montgomery County exceeded 1,000 seized firearms just last week. I'm fairly certain, I'm not exact on the number, but the 3rd district is in the area of 318 of those 1,000 firearms. So the officers that are working down here are really making some good arrests. They're taking guns off the street. I'm a firm believer, you know, yeah, I think there's some luck, but when things are good, I'll take credit. When things are bad, I got to take the heat. But I haven't had a homicide this year. I really think that when you look at the way the statistics are working on this, obviously 100% decline in homicides for Silver Spring, but I've seen a significant increase in our weapons seizures, the firearms that we're seizing. And I think it was a 44% decrease in firearms being used in the commission of a crime, so being shot. I think the mere fact that we're getting so many guns off the street, I think we're making progress with our violent crime. And that's, you know, that's good. We have a long way to go, yes, but we're still knocking it down. I said this in the past. I've been a police officer for 29 years. Oftentimes, and you also see this in other districts, you see individuals who were criminals, right? That were constantly breaking into houses or doing robberies or whatever, and we would target those individuals. The fact is that we're seeing so many individuals just committing these violent robberies and things. So young individuals, you know, all ages really, but it's not. It just seems like it's more people are doing these robberies as opposed to smaller groups of people kind of being serial robbers, and that's something that I think we're wrapping our head around.
Let's go to our next question, Paul Edwards.
Hi, I'm from the DC side of the line, and I wondered how much it's possible to coordinate with you. For example, when you were talking about closing down earlier, they're just going to come down the street to us. And we've inherited some of your problem bars sometimes. I know people who moved into the DC from Montgomery County when Montgomery County gave them problems. And also the difference in regulation for cannabis, the gray market in DC for cannabis. I'm wondering if that's part of the problem. And we're going to be open like 24 hours during the World Cup. So our bars will be serving the whole time. And is there any way to coordinate with Montgomery County so that some of this cross-border problem can be dealt with? Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Edwards, I appreciate that. You said a few things there. You know, I've said for a long time, and maybe it's just my age, but not much goes on good after 2 o'clock. And I'm not so sure I understand why any jurisdiction really has to have that ongoing constant nightlife that sometimes will go off the rails. I have a feeling, Ms. Edwards, that would be something that maybe DC politicians and Montgomery County, maybe in the DMV, there something could get spun up to have a conversation about that. But I really don't know. The police, the reason I say that I'm hopeful that things will change is because police don't make that change. Our government leaders do. And it's from hearing from the people, right? And so I would encourage you to obviously be vocal to your DC politicians and police department. I will tell you that our relationship with the Metropolitan Police Department is really, really good. We do a lot of operations together, or I should say when crime goes across the borders, we have an easy transition of handing things off or working with our counterparts over there. And so that's been a good thing. And you talk about cannabis. In November, in a few days here, my personal opinion is that Maryland's getting ready to make a huge mistake, and they're going to more than likely decriminalize cannabis. I will tell you that most of our firearms are accompanied with people smoking, in possession of marijuana. That's just a fact. I think that people think that decriminalizing cannabis is going to make all of our problems go away. I'm one that believes that it will not. And I think that the black market for cannabis is going to skyrocket. And I think you're going to see violence associated with that as well. And also, I think that you're going to see problems with cannabis impaired driving. And that's something that we're not talking about, but those are things that I'm thinking about. And I think that there are statistics from Colorado that would suggest that we're going to see some issues. And it's the voters will have that decision on this week. So we'll see what happens. But I tell you that you're going to see some significant changes probably from the state's attorney's office in regards to the possession and use of marijuana. And I believe that law enforcement is not, when you decriminalize and you have a state's attorney's office that more than likely is not going to prosecute minor cases at the district court level for civil or criminal cases, I think that you're going to see police really get out of, responding for some of these calls for service, because it's simply not going to be a violation of county law.
I want to thank some of our board executive directors from Safe Silver Spring on the call tonight: Karen Matson, Amy Henchy, Danielle Terrelong, and Daniel Caroma. Thank you guys for joining us. Kathleen Smith, you've got a question.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Question. We go through periods of time. We live about 2 blocks from downtown on Silver Spring Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
We go through periods where shots are heard during the night,
Yep.
4:30, 4 in the morning, just this past week, 4:20, and sometimes very, very close. It's very scary.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody generally calls, police cruisers arrive, they go up and down the street looking, but by then, of course, whoever was there has gone. In most cases anyway. And I just want to know, is there a phenomena where people just for fun kind of go into neighborhoods now and just shoot just for the sake of doing something at 4:20 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning? Is it, because I think I've heard of this happening in other areas, and I'm wondering if this is a pattern here. Thank you.
Well, again, I think it goes to my statement of not many things go good after 2 o'clock. I'll stop trying to give so much of my opinion, but we do get calls for shots fired. And what we do is we try to get there fairly quickly. And a lot of times we actually do find we do find casings from these weapons that are being fired. And then we try to, because typically the individuals who do this, then flee. And we obviously don't catch them, but we do try to follow up with the ballistics investigation to see if we can link the cartridge to any other crimes. And then a lot of times what happens is, based on the databases, is that gun will maybe turn up at a crime scene at a later date, and we kind of piece together the puzzle of all these incidents that related to that gun being fired. Unfortunately, sometimes like up in the Burnt Mills area, we've had houses shot into, and the interesting thing is that the owners of the house aren't any, there's no suspicions of them being associated with anything bad or for somebody having a particular hit out for that family. And so sometimes we have the projectiles that go into the house, which are really concerning. So yeah, we do. We have it all. It happens, quite frankly, all over the county. In Silver Spring, I was trying to look for my my information on that, but we've had contact and non-contact shootings, and a non-contact shooting would be, in fact, what you just described in the neighborhoods. They're very hard to solve, but we do make attempts to do that.
We're coming to the end of our time. Let's say we end at 8:30. That's about 15 minutes. We don't have to go that long, but T. Briggs, you have a question? Other people have questions, please raise your hand so we can respect everybody's time and bring this to a good conclusion. T. Briggs?
Hi, thanks for taking my question, and thanks for hosting this today. I'm also on the DC side of the line, and I'm on the Shepherd Park listserv with Ms. Edwards. I'm Tamara Skurlock Briggs, and I'm just calling to, well, it's really interesting that you would touch upon the marijuana issue, and I did not realize that sounds like it's about to be fully legalized, because what I wanted to contribute is that, and it's probably something that you're aware of, there is quite a robust open air marijuana market down in downtown Silver Spring, especially at the Metro and, in and around where the shooting occurred in the broad daylight, last week. My daughter, who is 16, is constantly propositioned at all of those places to purchase weed. So I don't know, does that become legal? And I hear what you're saying. So I'm probably answering my own question, which is, I kind of think that there's a correlation between the marijuana and the gun use. I mean, because I don't know what that was downtown. I did get on 15 minutes late. And I'm just wondering if you all have gotten to the bottom of what that was, but it just kind of screamed, drug-related infighting to me. So I'd like to get a little perspective on what exactly it was, and then what does this law change mean, and are we able to mitigate all this open air drug market? Because I really think that could be at the heart of some of these gun violence problems.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Briggs. So we did talk about the shooting. I have suspicions that it was drug related. Because it's an ongoing investigation, I really can't talk about some of the things that we're following up on. What I told the group was that very confident we'll have both those individuals identified and in custody in a short amount of time. Maybe we'll learn more about that when we have them in custody. I think that there's a direct relation to marijuana and guns in Silver Spring and in Montgomery County in general. I just think we're seeing a lot of guns turn up with marijuana. It's a violent drug. Historically, our homicides that are drug related, the drug that's related to these homicides has been marijuana. And I will tell you that by decriminalizing marijuana, you're going to see, Maryland's going to get into the business of selling marijuana recreationally. But your Silver Springs and your Tacoma Parks and I think some of your other neighborhoods down county, they're not going to spend 3 times the amount of money that a recreation dispensary is going to sell the marijuana for, and the black market's going to thrive, and that's something that I think we have to prepare ourselves for. As far as prosecution, I really think that I think it's important for this group maybe to actually invite Mr. McCarthy on to talk about what he plans to do for the future, because I certainly don't want to speak for him, but I do know that the simple possession, both civil and criminal, are no longer going to be prosecuted. So one would argue, if the police know that the lead law enforcement agent in Montgomery County is not going to prosecute that particular crime, do we really have a right to arrest people for that? And so I would say that we probably would not. So it's going to be interesting how we kind of navigate into these next few months, and once it's decriminalized in the next week or so.
Before we go to Albie, Commander McBain, one of the questions that's popped up in the chat is an observation that there were no police officers near Veterans Plaza when the shooting occurred at the skating rink. Can you add any information about that? Were officers nearby? Did it take them a couple of minutes to get to the scene?
Yeah, it took them a couple of minutes. I did not have officers in Veterans Plaza at that time. That is true. I said when I opened up, I said it took us a couple minutes to get there, but the response time was fairly quick.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Albie.
Yes, so switching gears a little bit on topic. I'm the public safety officer over in Woodside Park, and
did you meet with my lieutenant tonight?
No, it's coming up. A couple days.
Good.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool.
And we have more questions for you, but since you're here, I wanted to ask you.
Gotcha.
Because we're having a giant debate on our listserv and around the neighborhood about home security systems. And I hate to say preferred vendor, but I understand that some collaborate. There's some collaboration functionality with some of them with Montgomery County Police. And so I wanted to get your comments on if you had any that I should be approaching for a big group discount for our community.
Yes, so the easy way out for me on this one is I can't make recommendations as a Montgomery County commander. Same as I can't make recommendations for tow companies or funeral directors, or I'm not allowed to really weigh in. And to be honest with you, I know that when you the Ring doorbells and stuff, I do know that our detective bureau, oftentimes we work with them. I don't know what the relationship is, how that happens, but I will tell you that oftentimes if we do have a shooting, or if we do have even a theft from auto, oftentimes they obtain video from citizens that, you know, community members that say, hey, I've got this video. And again, I'm not giving a plug to Ring. That's kind of like the common, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, well, this works. Thank you.
Yes.
Coming to the end of our time here. Anybody have any other questions you want to ask Commander? How do you pronounce your name? Is it Juta or Huta?
Hello?
Yeah, you. Yes, please
Yes,
ask your question.
Thank you. Can you give us a sense of the number of weapons that are confiscated in a day's time or a week's time, just so we get a sense of the extent to which weapons are saturated in the community?
So I kind of spoke about this a little bit. It does definitely vary, but in the last 3 days, we've seized in Silver Spring alone 5 handguns. I would say that, well, I wish I had the numbers. The fact that we have exceeded 1,000 handgun or 1,000 firearms seizure in Montgomery County, without having the numbers with me, I'm almost certain that's double what we've seen in past years. There's a significant uptick in the amount of firearms that we're seeing in the county. I do know, I believe it was this group that we were talking, it might not have been, but somebody had asked me once, how many people have we arrested that had carry permits? Because now Maryland, it's quite a bit easier to get a carry permit. The answer to that still remains one individual, but that individual happened to point that gun at somebody else over in the 4th district, and they placed a lookout for the individual, and we arrested him on New Hampshire Avenue. And then as part of that investigation, we notified the Maryland State Police and had his carry permit rescinded. So, but there's been definitely a huge uptick in the number of firearms. Things that the catalyst to that are the PMFs, the privately manufactured firearms. The 3rd district has seized 38 this year. And the only district that supersedes us is next door in our 4th district, and they've got me by 1. They seized 39, but we're seeing record number of firearms, and my district, it's
What do you
hard
get?
to
What do you do with them?
Well, for quite a bit of time, the weapons are evidence. And then once the case is done, I know that we don't give guns back. Obviously, if we seize guns of somebody who legally owned the gun but used it wrong, then I believe they have a right to get their guns back. I don't know about all the policies and how we go about that, but I do know that we also destroy a fair number of guns as well. And understand also, a lot of times what we see with firearms that are not illegally possessed, a lot of times they're stolen firearms. So there's not only the crime at hand, or that the fact that the firearm was used in a crime, but then we figure out how that gun was stolen, whether burglary or what happened, and we make contact with the owners to get the guns back to them. And also to make sure that those guns were being legally, protected or locked up.
I think one of the most stunning statistics you mentioned when we had our meeting in October was the number of ghost guns that you picked up.
Mhm.
The idea that people are manufacturing guns at home with their 3D printers.
Yep.
Is really quite scary. Our last question will be from Yolanda Phillips. Yolanda, please.
Hello. I just had a question. Do you, what are your thoughts on opening or reopening a police station in downtown Silver Spring?
So I have the substation that's out of the firehouse. It's kind of combined the firehouse, Progress Place, and my substation. There was, when I first took over command in the 3rd district, there was serious consideration to expand that build out. And I do also know that the department has flirted a little bit with the 7th district that would probably be down in Silver Spring. I don't, again, we go back to manpower. So we have some problems there with could we even spin up another district right now? I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but my central business district team and my DCAT team operate out of the substation at the firehouse. I will tell you, also earlier when I became the commander here, I even did some work on actually putting we call them PSAs, but basically like desk clerks that work during the days and evenings, just so that citizens or community members could go to either report crimes or to get fingerprinted or do things that you would normally see at the district station up here in White Oak. So that remains open, but it clearly does not operate like a police station like the 3rd district. But I do run officers out of there. So instead of them coming up to White Oak to start their day out in a roll call, they're in a roll call in downtown Silver Spring, just in case something were to happen at early morning or, whenever their shift started.
Well, thank you, Commander McBain, for joining us this evening to talk about the resources that you have at the 3rd district and some of the things that have happened to downtown Silver Spring. Safe Silver Spring will be having its next quarterly meeting with Montgomery County Police in December. But if something pops up, we can stand up one of these special meetings. So on behalf of Safe Silver Spring, I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. And Commander McBain, thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very
guys.
much.
Have a nice
Really
evening.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.